भनेर रहेको छ। यहाँहरूलाई यो सेसनमा इच्छुक हुनुहुन्छ, सुन्न इच्छुक हुनुहुन्छ भने यो हलमा बसिदिनु होला। Without further ado, let's kick off our first session, Nepal, the gateway to Asian art, culture, and literature. This discussion will explore Nepal's deeply rooted art, culture, and literature across Asia. We have a distinguished panel for this discussion. I will announce the name and I request all the speakers to come to the stage and the moderator. We have a panel of Dr. Abhi Subedi, a celebrated poet, playwright, and critic. Tulasi Diwasa, an eminent poet and folklorist. Uday Prakash ji, an award-winning Indian author and filmmaker. Rohini Rana ji, a leading figure in the cultural scene. This session is going to moderated by Chandra Dev Bhatta ji, a well-known scholar and intellectual. I would like to invite all the panelists and moderator at the stage for the session. Let's give them all a big round of applause as they take the stage. The time for this session is 1 hour. And I know 1 hour is not enough for this legendary panel. So, Chandraji, you need to make sure to finish on time. We have 1 hour. Thank you. Chandraji, the stage is yours. Thank you.
Sorry, we're still waiting for 2 more speakers, and as soon as they come, we will start. You can get in. So do you speak? You don't speak. Do you speak Nepali? No, I don't. So but I can listen to English. Yes. I did your podcast. I was saying that I can speak English as well. I can speak everything. Still waiting for speaker, Professor Abhi Subedi and Professor Tulasi Diwasa.
If they are around, if they are listening me, please do come to the meeting hall so that we can start our program. He was, I met him.
I came last time book, right? But
Maybe from the organizer, if you could get Professor Subedi, Professor Abhi, he was just around here. I met him. He was in the hall a few minutes ago. He's here. Sir. Kin? Okay. Sir, you are here. So, sir, उता लाग्नु. यति हो म्याम? अर्को स्टार हुनु है यति हो ओके नहीं आएंगे तो we will start. Okay, thank you so much. Good morning to all of you. My name is Chandra Dev Bhatta. I think I'm not really the right person for this session because I don't have much. I'm a political scientist. I don't know much about art, culture, and all these things. But I will try to. Let's see how does it go. But we have got a very distinguished panelist. I think they don't really need any introduction. Professor Abhi Subedi. He has been a professor at the Tripoli University for a long period of time. He's public intellectual. In fact, he's been writing in a regular press as well as his academic work. Madam Rohini Rana, she has published very interesting books on cookery. I'm sure that's quite an interesting part for this session. And Uday Prakash sir from India, he is also eminent poet, eminent writer, eminent scholar, and has been frequently coming to Nepal. And attending Lit Fest. I think last year he was just telling me that he was in Pokhara for the Literature Festival. The topic itself is it's a quite large, it's a really difficult as well. I really don't know how to start it, but I think it will be, when I was listening the earlier sessions, this has, that has slightly, I think I'm slightly in a comfortable zone now. How do you define art, culture, or traditions and the interlinkages or interface between them? That's quite an important part. And I think they cannot really be separated. They are interlinked with each other. Also, when we talk about Nepal being a gateway, the theme of this session is the gateways to the Asian art and culture, Asian art, culture and literature. That means we are putting Nepal in the center from the perspective of art, culture, and tradition. So there are two things we really need to talk about. What is the importance of Nepal with regard to the art, culture, and trade? How the traditions, then how these all things are interlinked with the other countries. Like we share many things culturally, many things with India. We cannot really separate from each other. There is a. I just wanted to point out one very interesting sloka from Kalidas, Raghuvansham of Kalidas. I'm sure you must have gone through that sloka. That's the first sloka of Raghuvansham, in fact. भागर्थ विव संपृक्तो भागर्थ प्रतिपत्तये जगत पितरो बंदे पार्वती परमेश्वरो. Like it's like, you cannot separate Mata Parvati from Parameshwara Shivaji. It's the same thing like you cannot separate word from its meaning. Without the meaning or without the word, that they cannot really, we cannot really make any sense out of it. So when we talk about the culture or the civilization that we have been talking about, we cannot exclude one country from the other. Like, the India and Nepal, we need to talk about both the countries. Civilized, be it civilization, be it culture, be it tradition, be it art, because we share many things. Many things. There are a lot of commonalities as well. In terms of civilizations, and we are when we're talking about the gateway to the Asian culture, I think there is a deeper meaning inside it. We need to try to understand that. I just wanted to highlight, I'm sure all of you might be aware of it. There were 46 civilizations identified by the UNESCO, and the only one civilization which is surviving till today is the civilization that we call Bharatiya civilization, Indic civilization, or Sanatan civilization, which has survived till today. There are a lot of, so we cannot survive the civilization or Nepali civilization or Indian civilization. That's the same thing, and they complement each other in many ways, right? So when we talk about these gateways things, there are a lot of things we also need to talk about the commonalities as well. The how why we become the gateways. If we talk about I just wanted to give a background. Then after that, I will go to our comment speakers. A lot of things like the Sanatan civilization or Hindu civilization, if you talk about, the famous Western scholars, intellectuals, I've always appreciated about it. Mark Twain, I'm sure you must have heard of his name. He's an American scholar. He basically appreciate the civilization that we live in. Likewise, there are many other scholars as well from the Western part of the world. So they appreciate the civilization primarily because there must have been something in the civilization that we not need to talk about. So there has been that appreciation has still been there. But the civilizational continuity can only, this continuity can only happen when we, as Sanjeev Sanyal in the morning was talking about that, when we nurture it. But that nurturing is not really happening today, because see, we share same civilization, but we cannot really talk in the same language. Like we need to communicate our message through English. But if that happens, then I don't think we will really be enriching our civilizational values as well. Yet again, then in today's globalized world, we cannot really, separate. We cannot remain aloof from all these things which are happening around the world. So that is this is the context. When we talk about Nepal, then a lot of things has happened. When we talk, this the history itself, the country's history is quite rich. It's considered as one of the ancient modern state in the world. When if you read the Carl Dess, the famous American political scientist, he has categorized Nepal as a 22nd state in terms of the state formation in the region. There were only 21 states before Nepal became a nation state in a modern sense of the term. So a lot of things like in history, that different time frame, the country has been known in a different way. In the Satya Yuga, this is used to have this the land used to be known as a tapobhumi. Yes, in Treta Yuga, in Kali Yuga, in Dwapar Yuga, we have this has got the country itself has got a very long history as well. It has been mentioned in Mahabharata. If you read the Arthashastra of Kautilya, Nepal has been mentioned there as well. Skanda Purana, Skanda Purana, Himot Khanda, Skanda Puran, as well as in other literature as well. So Nepal itself is a very ancient state. So it has got a very ancient civilization, and it is the only country I would say which has been practicing different types of cultural values till today. I think we don't find same thing in India. I don't think that because of the continuous. I don't know whether you will feel comfortable or uncomfortable if I use the word invasion, but you have got a lot of the outside invasion for a long period of time. So we somehow have been able to maintain that cultural purity, if you want to say, for till today. But we really don't know what lies ahead for us, primarily because we've not really been able to adjust with the changing dynamics. These changes are taking place in politics, economy, society, and technology is the one of the most important factor that is bringing all these changes. The if you talk of the cultural stuffs or the katha, it also include the storytelling, folklores, and all these things, folk tales, all these things. Today, none of our youngsters, those who go to the schools or colleges, they don't really know about the Hari Katha. If we really wanted to make the culture rich, then you need to know about that cultural past. But a lot of our youngsters and children, they know about Harry Potter's Katha. So from Hari Katha to Harry Potter's Katha, when there has been some sort of shift, that will have a great deal of impact on the way the culture has been practiced in the past. With this, now I first wanted to get ask a question to Professor Abhi Subedi. You've been writing about culture. I've been reading your regular columns in the Kathmandu Post, your book, recent ones, as well as other, your speeches, different types. How do you think how has Nepal become a gateway to the world's, its contribution to the world, art, culture, or literature, at the global level, as well in the days to come? So you have 3, 4, 5 minutes. Then after I will go for a second round.
Can you hear? Bujinsa? The question was very important. The background that Bhattaji presented to his discourse is very enlightening. Actually, that's a very good starting point. He gave a very good starting point for everybody to discuss here. That's a very nice one. The question, the subject is very big. I just want to say, confess at the very beginning, the topic is very vast and something that is not possible to be to be brought into a kind of discussion in one session. But I'd like to only mention one aspect, inter-art character of the culture. Especially the context here that we are going to address, I guess, in this seminar. I'm not very clear. I have not read any literature about the Kalinga and the purpose from Bhattaji. What Bhattaji is, that's the basis for me, is that there has always been a movement of the cultural and artistic kind of experiments and sharing of the countries of this region, actually, I'm not talking in terms of border just now. In terms of the geography, this sub-part of Asia, which includes Nepal, India, and South Asia, for example. In talking about the Nepali evolution of Nepali art, I just want to focus first on traditional art. The word that Bhattaji used, the gateway. I'd like to address the question of the gateway very briefly. It's a gateway to the world, to the region first, and then to the world. The most essential aspect of the artistic movement of this region is closely associated with spirituality and religion. The same element is treated slightly differently in different parts of South Asia. When the same culture is treated by artists in Nepal, they have used very indigenous style and pattern. We have written a lot. Professor Arun Gupta is sitting right there. He has written a very important book called The Goddesses of Nepal. And he has added and written another volume. His argument is that he has made an extensive survey of the goddesses of the Kathmandu Valley, just an example. And he has discovered the very indigenous character of the same gods and goddesses that are very famous and well worshipped and known all over India. But they retain a different character here in Nepal. The same deities, but retain different character. That is how actually the culture and religion have been traveling across the region. So the first point I just would like to mention is that the Hindu religion, Buddhist religion, the culture is always traveling from one place to another in this region. So wherever this artistic tradition is taken and introduced, it has assumed a new character, changed with the local conditions, which could be ecological, which could be anthropomorphic, anthropological. So changes. The basic cultural tenets remain the same, but the artistic formations, styles, and some aspect of the motifs also change. So that is how we should look at Nepal's artistic heritage related to culture and religion. As Bhattaji has mentioned that in detail, which will come up in the discussion. So this is my first point. And with this first point, I'd like to stop just now.
Thank you, sir. Now, I get back to you, sir. I'm sorry to say that I've not really been able to read much of the work that you have done, but I was just doing some Google research and I found a lot of information about the work that you have done in India and particularly the literary work. In the opening remarks, I've also mentioned some of the challenges that the countries like Nepal and India are facing, because we are somewhere between the modernity and tradition. Like we have to strike a balance between these two factors, modernity, because we also wanted to be modern, because the world itself is becoming modern in more than one way. Many things are changing, but at the same time, we've been talking about the culture which has got more than 10,000 years of history. Like largely our cultural values, our tradition, as Professor Subedi has mentioned, all these comes from religion, scriptures. Frijo Capra, if you have read his work, this book Tao of Physics, he says that the Natya Shastra, whole Natya Vidha has come from Shiva's dance. Natya Shastra, Shiva's dance, the cosmic dance of Shiva's. So if we forget all these things, if we forget the past, we cannot really think about the future. We have to think future in a different way. In fact, that's the dilemma we live in. And that this perhaps would be the reason why the culture, art, or the stories, the stories are not really coming up these days. Lok katha, those that we used to listen in the child during the childhood are not really coming up these days. What do you think is the reason behind it, and how should countries like ours, which believes in the values, the 5,000 years or 10,000 years of cultural practices we've been still doing, because we still do the bhumi puja. No countries in the world do that. That's the the dynamics or dilemma we live in.
Really, this is very, to me, something, because I'm a writer, and the writer is one who doesn't take history as it is being provided. And memories, and we have like a Smriti, Shruti, so those kind of things. Our mythologies are, in a way, made through them. But to me, the memories are, you were talking about that. Memories, we have also genetic memories. So why should we go to the time since, cities were being made, the Harappan civilization or whatever? We should go back and we should think little more behind beyond history, say 30 or 35,000 years. So since then, like if you come to, our problem is when we talk about modern history, then we think Nepal stands as one of the buffer countries who was never colonialized, like Afghanistan. So it is very strategically position is held. From India, I'm from India. We have many things in common, so many things in common, it's countless. But the same thing goes to other parts also, like Tibeto-Burmese, like we from Indic valleys, Sindhu civilization, and we share philosophies. And one of the greatest religion, not religion, the philosophy, Buddha and Nemi, they all was were from here. So influences are, I think, reciprocal. Who influenced more, who is really influenced and then writing or thinking under that influence is a different thing. To me, the writer sometimes is really he has an antenna who wants to react to what is happening now. So I remember, you may laugh, it was 1999 till 2001. I was an editor of one English journal, magazine, Eminence. And remember 1999, and when this IC 814 or 816 plane was hijacked from here, from Nepal. And I wrote an editorial. And when I'm here, a film has been made on it. It is again became controversy. And I was thinking, when this millennium was getting changed into new millennium, what were the global issues which has been really stimulating the mind of everyone? That was the Y2K problem. They said that the Y2K is going to end whatever we have that. So the major problem was we were worried about forgetting everything. And what we are landed on is now remember, this is going to happen. So see the juxtaposition. And I got so scared that I think that sometimes we feel like forgetting history. Sometimes we like to take some lessons from our mythologies, which are not going to divide us. And art, like he has said, the literature, they really make a bond. It's a kind of an underlying linking uh, current which unites them all, like music, like artifacts, like folklores, like rituals, like songs, even letters, the words and proverbs and rituals. So I think if we really go back and think a little more, so on the one hand, we are writing today, we are talking about when democracy, parliamentary democracy came, when the parliament was established, what was the non-aligned movement, what was the marketing, say, economic situations, what are the civil situations. So when we think about them, writer, I think works a little more deeper, a little higher. So like, I would like just to tell you very humbly that I'm writing a novel. And the title of the novel is China Baba. And China Baba, like you said, when the wars were on everywhere on the China side and from the other side. So a fellow who was 14 years of age, he got so scared and he crept into India. And he reached to Kushinagar where Buddha had given up his life, his body, nirvana. So I'm writing. So I think that China Baba is a link. He might have come from the Tibetan side, from other side, like Sikkim and Bhutan side, from crossing Himalayas and somewhere, and he reached over here to India. So now geographically you think about the magnitude of the area we really belong to. And I, as a writer, always feel like there are we have conflicts. We have certain difference of opinions, how to write, what to write, but you have wonderful writers over here. I'm yet to know more about them. I want to read them. But like 3 or 4 years before, I was in Pokhara. And to my mind, Pokhara is one of the best places because I'm traveling a lot here. And Nepal still has a position to all of us, and we really love it. When I came over here, I saw other people who have read me. I have already 3 or 4 books published in Nepalese, but the way they welcome. So this is what I can say. I'm not a very kind of a debater that I can debate on separate who like Skanda Puran you have cited. I have really not read that, but I know a little about that. I also know Kirat was one of the warrior in Mahabharata, and I also know that the Sita was here, Janakpuri. So we all are too familiar, and it's almost indivisible part of our conscience, which is that's the reason I said we should think about more. We should think about 30,000 years back than just confining ourselves into the modern history. This is all I think.
Thank you, thank you. You are already, but you do it in very, in a very nice way. Now, I'll get back to you, ma'am. I have, the two interesting books that you have written, very interesting, published by Penguin. I think, it's quite, could be quite useful for the people from the younger generation. Primarily because most of us really don't know what do we really eat, what we have been eating, what people used to eat in the past. So you basically, the Rana's cookbook and the Nepali cookbook, very interesting ones. How do you think? I was trying to connect this cookery things, food habits, with the broader cultural context. In fact, food itself is a part of culture. It produces its own type of culture. We talk about the McDonaldization of society, or so that's a kind of a different, the culture. You have really gone deeper into that, the cooking or the eating habits of the one of the most influential family of Rohini Rana, which is the Rana family. And then also you talk about the different diverse types of the food items that we cook in Nepali kitchens. How do you think all these can contribute to the broader cultural context of South Asia? I think this is quite an important part, because if the societies are colonized through, might be harsh, but through these through cookings and things like that as well, it also produces its own type of cultural dynamics. So what motivated you to write all these things? The second was is how do you think this can really contribute to strengthen our, the ties with our neighboring countries, or we can, our influence at the global level?
Thank you for your question, Mr. Bhatta. I'd like to start with the ancient times. Ancient Nepal, India, I mean, there were no really borders as such, so we were all melting into each other. And I think Nepal has had a great influence in the neighboring countries. Princess Brikuti got married into Tibet to King Songtsen Gampo. And I hear with a dowry of architecture, culture, literature, she took along in her culinary dowry was the little Momo. So from making the pagoda to introducing Buddhism to also feeding the people, there are two theories of where the Momo originated. And one is that it traveled from Nepal to Tibet with Princess Brikuti, in the early 6th, 7th century. And another theory is that it came back with the Nevari tradesmen who used to do trading in Lhasa, and they found this little, dumpling stuffed with yak meat called mugmug and brought it back to Nepal. So whichever, we can see the inter-border connection there through the conduit of food. So we had relationships not only with trading, with culture, great architect, painter, Art Deco, took, our pagoda style of architecture to Tibet and later on to China, even went to the court of Kublai Khan. So all these things, I think the cultural relationship, my forte is, of course, through the conduit of food and culinary items. And I think Nepal, being in the middle of two gigantic civilizations of China and India, we have been able to massively benefit from both. China from the north, we've been influenced by the Tibetan culture, from the south by India, and we have formed our own indigenous culture, which is like a melting pot. So we've absorbed the best of both and taken out our own beautiful culture in every facet, let's say art, architecture with the beautiful Devari artsmen, coming out with so many beautiful sculptures and buildings and temples, the bronze, the wood, the stone sculptures, influenced from the north and south, the monasteries, the stupas from the north, the temples from the south, Pashupatinath, Swambhunath, stupa, all these are so famous all over the world. And then the culture of Nepal is just revolving around food. I think all our ritual, let's say all the festivities that take place here, all our festivals, main festivals of be it Losar, be it Dasai, be it Tihar, be it Mage, Sankranti, whenever we prepare to feast and to pray to the deities, our centrifugal, let's say, attention is around food, the preparation of the food. And these, I think, the traditions that have been followed are centuries old. The same food in different languages, in different ways is prepared. And first it's, of course, offered to the deities and then imparting in yourself. So all these, these are all cultural, let's say, threads that tie us together. Nepal being the melting pot of all the cultures, we've managed to, retain our own indigenous quality. And that can be depicted so well with the Newar community, who started off as Buddhists, and I've amalgamated the Hindu culture as well. And their feasting, and when they have the shagun, which is called the Samay Bhaji, you are not just thinking of food, you're thinking of spirituality, you're thinking of ritualism. You are, imbibing in the shagun. They have the Samay Bhaji, which is 5 different types of food offerings offered to God. And they imbibe the 5 elements. We are thinking that, we are imbibing the 5 elements of earth, water, air, fire, and ether or space. So in all these things, we see the spirituality is there, the religion is there, the culture. When you think of the Lakhe dances and, you think of the Pawa paintings or the beautiful mandalas made by the Tibetan influenced, the Thankas, all these even depict the old feasts and festivities. we have one of the most ancient, let's say, the practices of the Chaurasi Vyanjan, which is carried on from the epic Ramayana, where King Janak, prepared this feast for his son-in-law Ram and prepared 84 items of food to honor his son-in-law. So, that practice continues to date. Today, during our Bardhaman, our Pasni, and our weddings, we still go ahead with the Chaurasi Vyanjan. Might not be as elaborate and sumptuous as King Janak's, but we are still doing it. So that is so interesting that we have these, these ceremonies which center around food. Like, since it is the Kalinga Literature Festival, I'd love to bring back to Jagannath Puri, the temple in Jagannath Puri, and the Chappan Bhog, which is offered to the Jagannath temple and is available to anyone who wants to partake of it. So all these cultural activities, I feel, center around food because it is the centrifugal force of sustenance. We are sustained by food. Now, the way we practice it and eat it, and Mr. Bhatt remarked on 2 of my books. So the Rana cookbook has a little more, let's say, it's a little more, goes into more detail and is a little richer in the flavors because that was cooked by the ruling people or the aristocracy of Nepal. The Nepal cookbook, the second cookbook, I have tried to imbibe 10 of the main ethnic communities. I couldn't possibly have done them all. Nepali culture is so beautifully psychedelic. I mean, it's just too much to imbibe in one book. So the second one is just 10 ethnic communities, and I've laterally divided Nepal in 3 because of the topography and the climate. So the top Himalayan ranges where the Thakalis and the Sherpas stay, they have their totally own cuisine. And because of the very drastic nature that they have to survive in, they have perfected the art of drying, smoking, fermenting. We come down to the the hilly region, which really inhabit most of the communities, starting from the west, the Thakuris, the Baun, Chetri, Magar, Gurung, Tamang. We come to the Kathmandu Mandala, which is the Nevar community, which is supposed to be one of the most, let's say, high-reaching and really progressive societies in Nepal. And then we come to the east with the Kiratis, the Rai Limbus. We reach Madhes, which is very influenced by our Indian neighbor. We have the Tharu community, the Madhya Pradesh, and the Mithila. Now, even their art, their culture, their dances are all so beautifully vibrant and diverse. If you start going into it, it's just not the food, the art, culture, it is their costumes, their jewelry, they're just totally magnificent. So I think Nepal is a melting pot from the north and the south, and we have been able to propagate our culture to the rest of the world, to Southeast Asia, and to the rest of the world. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Now, I think we'll go for one more round, and I'll have one questions for you, Professor. We take great pride when we talk about past and the past. A lot of things that happened in the past. I just wanted to read out. I'm sure most of our participant here would definitely know about it. Sitale Sara Fijain, Dachina Lanka Bharata, Virkuti Tara Udain, Uttar China Tibeta, बुद्धले यही पाए थे ज्ञान को पहिलो मुहामा शिवले त्यही ल्याए थे सृष्टिको पहिलो बिहान. That's about the past. And the earlier round of questions were basically about the past only. We live in a present, and we don't really talk about the present and also the future. Madam was talking about the pagoda style, Shikhar style, different types of architecture that we had in the past. Today, if you see the cities that are coming up, not only the Kathmandu, the buildings that are coming up in the cities, but outside of Kathmandu as well, the buildings with the glass ceilings are coming up. So that's these buildings are creating a different type of momentum. That's one part. When you talk about the food, many people will, the youngsters, people from the younger generation may not be aware about the food items that, that we take great deal of pride on. The same thing goes with the literature as well. As I said, how Hari Kathas have been replaced by Harry Potter's Kathas. This is not only there, but in other sectors as well. It's a politics, it's economy, it's many things. You've been a professor for nearly 50 years, I would say. 45. Did I say too much? I don't think
40, 50 years.
So, how do you see? Where should we? Don't know. We have to move ahead. When we only talk about the past, that somehow is not really something we should always be talking about. We should be forward-looking. What should we do with regard to the art, culture, and all these things, so that we can still remain as a gateway to Asia, or at least so we could survive on our own.
That's a very good question. I didn't know the meaning of good question until I joined my British university. Somebody asked a very complex question, a professor, a student asked. And the professor said, that's a very good question. I thought that good question was Gotilo question. But good question means difficult question. That was the meaning I never knew. Good question means difficult question. That's a very good question. Like linking time with art is a very good question, actually. Rohini very brilliantly summed up the whole thing by bringing to food culture and also to the diversity of the people, and call it a kind of melting culture. That is the character of Nepal, she said. And Bhattaji linked in his question the relationship between the glorious past, its monuments, and what do all these cultural formations indicate for the future? This is a very good question he raised. I don't think I can easily answer this question in one session. One thing I just would like to raise here is the question of the interpretation question. In art, the most important part of the art study is the interpretation. How do you interpret the past from the present and art from different genres of art? Interpretation is a very important point. What we can see very easily, not easily, in a very complex way, is that there is no demarcation line between one period to another in art. For example, the Puranic time, the whole story of the past is created in the artistic form, but we don't know the timeline. So the artists create the form, like when we see the different formations, artistic formations in the valley or outside, in Jarakpur or any other place. We don't know the timeline. We know the myth. We know the Puranic story. But when was the Puranic story transformed into a shape? The shape could be epic. The shape could be the temples, the beautiful temples that we can see in this valley. And the architectural pattern. When did they take that shape? Not in the very hoary past, but they happened when people became able to interpret them and use the pattern, develop the technique. So they are later developments. But the art says that, oh, it is timeless. This is the story of the past, maybe eons ago, and so on. So this is a kind of interpretation time scale line is one very important point. And the other question I should also, before I forget, mention is that the architectural formation. People in this land have performed the miracles by creating the architectural forms. It's amazing, from the Lichavi time down to the present. Even though now the postmodernist forms are taking shape, I was attending one engineers, architects conference recently. And they had brought up this very interesting question. I also made a presentation at the conference. The question now, They were showing the kind of a timeline between the architectural form of the past and the later development of architectural formations and forms. The early shape of the architectures was so much influenced by religion and myth. If we see the Kathmandu Valley architecture, Neil Gustav has written several volumes of the Newar architecture, about four volumes. Madhav Marjan knows about 3 volumes, very, very powerful architectural volumes in Newar architecture. That's worth seeing the book. They have interpreted this art form. And what about the future? In art, there is one question called futurism. Is artists are always interested in the future, so much so that a school of thought developed in Europe called futurism, futuristic. They were a little anarchic because it is very difficult to imagine a certain shape of the future, so the futurists become a little anarchist. So what is going to be the future of our art? It's a very productive and beautiful question. What are we doing to our future by taking our artistic form? What kind of a future are we shaping by using the literature? Literature has a very different story. It doesn't, people don't, even if they use the past, they to create a very postmodernist, very futuristic kind of a pattern. What about in architecture? In architecture, the architects were discussing that if we are not careful, it is a mess. People can take any liberty with the kind of art. The Ranas, I want to mention the Ranas. The Ranas were very, very resourceful persons, but instead of focusing very carefully on the Newar art, indigenous art, they invited the Western art. But now the Neo-Baroque, that is called the Neo-Baroque, Asian Baroque. Singha and all these temples now, which are buildings, which have become the most useful in today's Nepal, like see the Singha Darbar and all the other buildings. Now, they have also become the part of the cultural heritage. People should save the Rana palaces because they are functional, pragmatic, and very useful and I'm very happy to see before the Java Coffee House, they are renovating the Kesar Mahal. So they also become the part of the heritage. So this is how Nepali heritage and Nepali art is being created, formed and solidified, created, consolidated. So it is very difficult to say the future gateway of Nepali architecture. It is very difficult to say because we are not very careful.
Professor, I'll have to stop you here. Maybe I think they want to. They have some kind time constraint. I'll just take 1 minute with. With him. One question for you. Shame, I don't want to repeat the question, but what is there in the future? One.
I was asking something which is, but it is again, I tell you, only the writers are there to do a prophecy. So we are really looking at a very bright future. And like he has said, this Nepal and Nepal's culture and literature must become a gateway to the future. So because we all are in a way responsible to retain that possibility. This is all I think.
Thank you, ma'am, to you as well. Including the future of everything like cooking and things like that, you have been writing about.
Right. I think through the conduit of cuisine and food, which that is really the sustenance of life, as well as one of the most pleasure-giving things that we can enjoy, I think. Like we like to scintillate all our senses, and so the art, architecture, culture does it to the brain, the eyes, the ears. But I think the palate is one of the most important things also. So food is one of the most important, let's say, part of art and art and culture as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your contribution. I think we need, this is a question that needs a deeper discussion. So maybe in the future, if we have questions like this, the topics like that, we at least need 2 hours to discuss about at least, yeah, so that we can have some sort of conclusion. So we might have a lot of questions from the floor as well. We really sorry we could not take any questions from the floor. And last but not least, thank you so much for this opportunity to be here. Thank you so much.
Well, that was a fascinating discussion on how Nepal serve as a cultural gateway. Sir, we have token of love. We have token of love. And to do the honor, I would like to invite Ms. Prachi Nayak at the stage to provide token of love to our panelist and moderator. Thank you so much. Moving forward, again we have panel on total parenting solution. The time for this panel is 1 hour, and this is also a book launch event. So the much awaited part